Good morning and welcome to Live Without Limits. Stop holding yourself back. Your breakthrough starts here. In this podcast, where we explore your mindset, your growth, and the deeper ideas that help us build life aligned with who we really are. Today's episode centers around a powerful phrase: hold your own, know your name, go your own way, and everything will be fine. At first glance, and we're doing this a little bit slow this morning. At first glance, these words may sound simple, almost like something someone says to comfort you during a difficult moment. But if you pause and really think about this phrase, it carries a profound message about identity, self-trust, and independence. Many people spend years searching for approval, direction, and reassurance from the outside world. If you're looking for something from the outside world rather than looking within yourself, like someone else is going to make you happy, not that happiness comes from within you, then you will always be searching for that answer. So let's look at it this way. If you pause and really think about it, this phrase carries a profound message about identity, self-trust, and independence. You can spend years searching for approval, direction, and reassurance from the outside world, but look to others for confirmation that we're doing the right thing. We worry about what people think. We hesitate when our path looks different from everyone else's. But the deeper truth is this: your life begins to change when you learn to trust yourself. So today, we're going to unpack the phrase piece by piece and explore what it means to live with the kind of confidence that comes from within. You can't find happiness outside. This is why if people depend on that, and it can be the reason that a relationship has problems, but it's more because the individual is unhappy within themselves, and it's easier for them to blame someone else as the cause rather than seeing just how much they have control over their own lives. And we don't always realize just how much all of this affects who we are and how we see the world around us. So, hold your own, standing strong in your identity. Let's begin with the first part of the phrase, hold your own. Holding your own means standing from in who you are, even when life becomes uncertain and when others question your choices. Life has a way of testing our confidence. There will be moments when people doubt you. Sometimes these doubts may even come from people who care about you. Maybe someone tells you that your idea won't work. And also remember this, that what's also going on, especially if it's an adult, or especially more so as an adult, your parent, what happens? They're trying to relive their life through you. So even those, and unless they really understand that and build up, are looking to build up your self-confidence, what's happening is that they are reliving their life through you, especially if they didn't achieve their own goals and they're trying to achieve their goals through you. And I'm going to also say this because I think it's important that everyone's body type is different. And if you've got a parent that's not happy with the fact that they might be a little bit overweight or a little bit, they can criticize you and demean your self-confidence, especially because our genetics affects how we look and whether or not we're going to tend to be broader or heavier or which parts of the body, because everyone's shape is different, but it's also affected by genetics. So if a parent is unhappy that they're overweight, they may sit there and criticize you just as a way of demeaning you to help make themselves feel better about themselves. So always remember that's a part of what's happening within us. Maybe someone questions your vision. Maybe someone suggests you should follow a safer path. In these comments, it's easy to lose confidence. Holding your own means remembering that your path doesn't have to make sense to anyone else. It means that you need to understand that the challenges, the criticism, and the setbacks are not proof that you're on the wrong path. They're often part of growth. Also, look at it this way, that what we're also dealing with is this, that when you set a goal for yourself, what's going on? It can be very daunting, but if you don't know exactly how to get there, you can go through trial and error. And if you go through trial and error, what's happening? Well, this is what's going on. Often we will put the brakes on because our fears take over instead of realizing, look at that mistake as a learning experience, that this didn't work. Well, think about it. What if Benjamin Franklin had given up? What if some of these inventors from the past, before they ever got started, gave up after the first time? Would we have the light bulb? Would we have the cotton gin? Would we have some of these machines that have helped improve the quality of life if someone gave up after the first time instead of keep going? So think about people who have created meaningful change in the world. Many of them faced criticism and resistance before their ideas were understood. Holding your own doesn't mean ignoring feedback or refusing to learn. It means maintaining your inner stability even when the world around you feels uncertain. When you hold your own, you stop measuring your worth based on other people's approval. You begin measuring your own progress based on your own values and your own goals. And that shift changes everything. So Now what we want to do is we want to talk about know your name, understanding who you truly are. The second part of the phrase says, know your name. Knowing your name should is is about understanding your identity. It's about knowing who you are beyond the labels and expectations that society places on you. From a young age, many of us are taught what success is supposed to look like. Have you ever remembered those advertising, how they talk about the perfect person, the one that's beautiful, the one that's got the perfect shape? What they're doing is they're giving you a false impression on what you should look like. And so many people, some of the problems when they have insecurities, what'll happen? It'll bring out anorexia. It'll bring out um, some of the other eating disorders. Or if someone is feeling pain, they can be very self-abusive. Many years ago, I had a sister that she was constantly being belittled and constantly told how she was worthless. So, and she found that by getting the attention, by hitting herself or physically abusing herself or threatening to commit suicide, that got the attention from our mother. So what would she do? She would it just brought that behavior on to the point that she was constantly doing it. So remember that who you are depends on the identity that you have inside yourself. And if a parent or a significant other constantly belittles you by being psychologically abusive, what happens? You've begun to internalize that and tell yourself the same thing. So by recognizing that, recognizing what you're saying and why you're saying it is what you become. And how many times that we talk about, do you remember the song that talked about the doctor, the lawyer, the candlestick maker, that's how people identify themselves, by their careers. And then what happens when you lose your career? You lose your identity. So we're told what careers are respectable. We're told what goals are realistic. We're told what kind of life we should have and aim for. But rarely are we encouraged to ask ourselves the deeper question, what do I truly want? Because each of us are unique. Each of us have qualities that make us who we are, because we all have different personalities. And whether it's the Myers-Briggs, whether it's the DISC, whether it's the colors, some people have more of an outgoing personality, while others are more introverts. So recognizing what your personality is, recognizing how you interact with the people around you, can determine how well you see yourself in relationship to how others see you, recognizing where you're coming from, recognizing how you become the person that you were meant to be, can also determine where you come from, how you see yourself, where you are in relationship to your goals and the things that you want. So knowing your name means becoming aware of your values. It means understanding what matters to you, not what matters to others. Okay. Now, I also want to relate this to religion, not in that we're talking about what you should believe, but remember that as a young child, you grow up in the church. Your family wants you to have and understand what they believe in. But as you get older, you start to begin to question certain things in your life. You start to take more control over your life, and you start to question what people are telling you. And you kind of slip away from practicing religion as you did as a young child, as a teenager, because you're experimenting, you're experiencing new things, you're beginning to take on more of your own identity. And then when you in a relationship with someone and you start having children of your own, you want them to know your faith. The problem is that how you judge how other people practice religion is just as wrong, and trying to tell them what they should believe. How would you feel if someone came to you and told you what you should believe when it comes to your faith? Because each of us have our own relationship with God, and how we come to it depends on how we were raised from the time we were young children. So remember, self-awareness is powerful because it gives you clarity. It also means recognizing your strengths, your interests, and the experiences that have shaped who you are. When you know your values, your decision making becomes easier. You stop chasing things that don't align with your identity. You stop trying to prove yourself to people who may never understand your path. Instead, you begin building a life that reflects who you truly are. And when that happens, your confidence grows. And because others approve of your choices, but because you know they align with your authentic self. Now, one of the things I want to do is tell you this, that when I went to college, my mother was trying to push me into teaching, and I knew teaching as in the public school or even in a private school, that was really not what my goals were. But I always knew I wanted to become an entrepreneur. And here's the thing. When I graduated college, I got a job with the state. And because I have a disability, the state and the government were hiring people with disabilities, but it was the private sector. It was still not as easy to get into a job. And then what happened was this. I lost my job with the state, and it was, I can't say it was all my fault, but, or even just part of my fault, because I know I did some things I shouldn't have done. But at the same time, what happened was, this was a position that every 6 months she was always hiring someone new, because she never really got along with anyone that held that position. And it was very much of a social work position where I represented the clients in getting them the services they needed, and would go to team meetings for the county and get services for them. And what happened was, anyone who held that position once they became permanent, they would hold the job until they found something else. So she was constantly hiring someone for that position, either every 6 months or at least once a year, because no one stayed with her permanently. Because what happened was, this was a training center for people with developmental disabilities. And at one time, how that particular program got started was that a group of people whose children had severe disabilities wanted a daycare center for them to go to so they would interact with other people. And she was made the director of it. But once the laws changed and the state took it over, she felt threatened by people who worked in those positions who had far more experience and training. And so she really did not hold on to anyone permanently. So I realized that even though it was some of it my fault, it also was she was threatened herself. And the thing is also that we need to recognize who we are and why we do the things we do, and how we have more control over what happens to us. But to get back to that story, once I lost that job, and I'm not sure exactly what kind of review she gave me, because I never saw it and she never told me. What happened was, I was never able to get back on with the state, couldn't get into the private sector, and always knew that eventually I would be interested in building my own business. And since I had no other options, I just knew what I'd always wanted to do and just started working towards those goals. And one of the things was to do and work as a professional speaker. That was very influential into me starting a podcast back in the early 2000s, before the term podcast was even coined. And what happened was, I did it with a company called Blog Talk Radio, and it was really nothing more than an audio program. There was no video involved in it, to the point that what really happened was that eventually, as different as YouTube and some of the and Rumble and some of the other platforms came available, where you could go on and you can do a podcast with video, then their services began to slow down, and they eventually went out of business and closed down, so that all my shows that were parked on their platform was eventually moved to a company called Spreaker, and also a company called Burberry, where I could send people to that link, and they can get an opportunity to listen to some of the shows that I did in the past, because many of the shows that I do on this platform really didn't start until probably 2015 or 2017, where I started using this more consistently and doing it as a video podcast and linking it to YouTube and to Facebook and to LinkedIn. But you can see just how technology has advanced and how it's made it more of an equal playing field for everyone. So now let's look at go your own way, the courage to follow your own path. The third part of the phrase is perhaps the most challenging. You go your own way. Following your own path requires courage. It means accepting that your journey may look different from the journey of others. Sometimes society encourages us to follow certain paths because you seem predictable or safe, but safety does not always lead to fulfillment. Many people spend years pursuing goals that were never truly theirs. They follow paths that are chosen by family expectations, social pressure, or fear of standing out. But deep down, something feels missing. Now remember this. How many times have children gone into business where they took over their father's law practice or medical practice or dental practice, and maybe it was a calling for them. Maybe it wasn't. It's like my sister became a teacher because there was not a whole lot of options for women at the time, but also because it was something my mother pushed her into, and she was never happy as a teacher. She never stayed in the same school more than a year or two. She was always constantly making I know that she was on antidepressants while she was teaching because she just was not happy there. She was always very good at math. She always wanted to go into accounting. And yes, it wasn't always open to women, but she should have taken her own path instead of being pushed into doing something she didn't want to do. And then what happened was after 19 years of teaching, she was forced to take a leave of absence for 3 years. And then when she went back, the same pattern happened. And the last year that she taught, she had to literally change school systems so that she could get her 30 years in as a teacher for her pension. So we always remember that if you're not following the path that was meant for you, that you want to do, then you're never going to be satisfied. You're never going to be happy. And then you're going to try and push your children into doing what you wanted to do rather than looking at what are things that they should be doing for themselves. Recognizing that instead of comparing one child to the other, always remember that the best thing you can do for your child is let them be who they were meant to be, because deep down something feels missing. Going your own way means going and giving yourself permission to explore a life that reflects your passions, your talents, and your curiosity. It means trusting your own instincts when they guide you toward something different. And yes, it can feel uncomfortable. Sometimes going your own way means being misunderstood. Sometimes it means walking alone for a while before others begin to see the value in what you're doing. But the alternative of living someone else's life often leads to regret. Your life is not meant to be a copy of someone else's journey. Your experiences, perspectives, and choices are unique. And when you allow yourself to explore that uniqueness, you open the door to possibilities that might never have existed otherwise. So this is what I've been talking about, how when you become, how you are unique, you have qualities that are not in your parents, that are not in your siblings, but make you different. We all have different personalities because each of us, and it's what makes the family all work together and stay together. So recognizing that, recognizing the difference in who you are, because some people can sit at a desk and work for hours, and while others need to get up and move around and never sit still. So always recognize that what we need to do is be true to ourselves. Everything will be fine. Trusting the process. The final part of this phrase says, everything will be fine. This doesn't mean life will always be smooth or predictable. Challenges will happen. Unexpected obstacles will appear. But when you hold your own, you know your name, and go your own way, you develop something incredibly powerful. Resilience. Resilience is the ability to adapt, to learn, and to move forward even when things don't go exactly as planned. People who trust themselves don't panic when things become uncertain. Instead, you would focus on what you can control. You learn from setbacks. You adjust your strategies. You keep moving forward. Confidence isn't about having all the answers. Confidence is about believing in your ability to figure things out along the way. And when you trust yourself in this way, the future becomes less intimidating. So recognizing who you are and why you are the way you are helps you understand that you become more resilient and adapting at learning how to build self-confidence and learn from failure. Now, what I want you to do is take a moment to reflect on the phrase, hold your own, know your name, go your own way. Everything will be fine. These words remind us that our greatest strength doesn't come from external validation. It comes from self-awareness, self-trust, and the courage to live authentically. When we stop seeking constant approval and begin listening to our own inner voice, we discover something important, that we already have the wisdom that we need to move forward. Sometimes we just need the courage to trust it. So I want to thank you for joining me today on Live Without Limits. Stop holding yourself back. Your breakthrough starts here. If this message resonated with you, take a minute to reflect your own journey and ask yourself, am I holding my own when life becomes challenging? Do I really know who I am when it matters most to me? Am I following my own path or someone else's expectations? Remember, life isn't about fitting into someone else's definition of success. It's about discovering who you are and creating a life that reflects that truth. And when you trust yourself enough to do what you'll realize something is powerful, that you already have everything you need to move forward. And next time, keep exploring what it means to live without limits. Now, I want to finish up by telling you an experience of something that I had this week. I've been doing podcasts for nearly 20 years, and all of a sudden I got an email from someone about they found a book of mine that talked about creating your own business around your passion, and had I never considered doing a podcast around that topic, which is basically a podcast around entrepreneurship and what opportunities are out there. Well, I've been podcasting and dealing with it from this side of it because my background is really psychology and mental health and rehabilitation counseling. And being a life and a therapist, a life coach or a therapist was really where my goals were in helping people. But I also got involved with the entrepreneurship because when I started my business, there was really no place out there where you could really go and study and learn how to build your own business. And so I knew that was a topic that needed to be discussed, and created courses around it, and then developed some ebooks around the topic. And they were just coming at me from out of the blue just because they saw something that and it's like, what? And so I made an appointment with them. Well, do you know that before they even told me what they could do for me and how they could help me create my brand and market my podcast, the first thing he started asking me were questions about, well, what were my goals for my podcast? How did I see it? And the thing is, it sounded more like he was just assuming the sale, like I was going to go and pay them $600 to help me put a podcast to produce it, and pay them $5,000 a month to create my brand for me. Unbelievable. You've got to be careful because you don't really need that to pay that kind of money to get started. But they were looking for people who were looking, and then it was like, oh, we can get you to a point where you can be making money off of it. Well, there's thousands of podcasts out there, and you're not the only one talking about what you talk about. Your unique perspective on that topic is what makes it, and you can create a brand around it basically, I know even this past year, I've changed some things, but like my using the thing, stop holding yourself back, your breakthrough starts here, coincides with a program that I've set up and that I've marketed myself as a life coach. And that becomes my brand. If you notice that I have certain colors like maroon and ivory, that's because that's the colors of my company. That's my brand. You can see my logo here that says CPI, Career Performance Institute, on my podcast. That's my brand. And as people find it, I've got a thumbnail that I use on YouTube that is my brand. So recognizing that, seeing all of that is how you can brand yourself. So don't let someone tell you, and then that concept is, oh, we're podcasts, we saw casters, we saw this lacking, and then what they're doing is they're using that as their come on so that they can make you think that they know more than you do. Well, I've been in this business long before they ever came into existence. And I was around when the term podcast didn't even exist, when it was just called internet radio. Think about what Howard Stern does, and he does it through Sirius XM, but that's because the 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 concept of what a radio station was back in the 20th century and what it is today is very different. And it can be a network of people who do the same thing. And understanding that and understanding how you can promote each other, you do not have to pay people. And the funny thing was, I believe it was 10 or 12 years ago, broadband media came to me, and for $3,500, they were going to put up take my podcast and put it on their platform, and then I would have a producer, and our show would be in segments, and they would run ads. They made it originally sound like I could bring in companies for advertising on my show, and I would earn a percentage off of that. And what they were actually doing was making advertising for other podcasts on there and inserting those on your show, so that they were actually making money off of you, not the fact that you were earning anything doing your podcast on their platform. That's why they ran out of steam as far as when one contract ended, finding someone to replace you. And so my podcast actually sat in that time slot for like 4 or 5 or 10 years beyond that, because no one else bought that slot, and they eventually moved into offering it as TV and setting up a network. And if you notice that you can go on Roku and some of those other platforms and create your own TV show and do exactly what I'm doing here as a TV show. So recognizing what's going on and how, if you're interested in podcasting, do your research. Don't allow people to come and tell you that they know better than you.